at Oxford and Sheffield, head of Department of History 1938 to 1945 at U of M. In his letters, McLuhan has this to say about him. February 23rd, 1931. I have reason to be elated today. I received back my second history essay with the following note. This is that very, very pure thing, a student's essay which I can finally say I enjoyed reading. Excellent work. It was worth 2 weeks' work to earn a compliment from the fastidious Fieldhouse. And while many felt Fieldhouse was a legend and the most inspiring teacher they ever had, others felt he was dangerously ambiguous with regard to fascism. According to W. Stanford Reed, an evangelical Calvinist in the Academy, quote, Fieldhouse was a pilot in the First World War and maintained a swashbuckling style that glamorized him with some, particularly women, and irritated others, a consummate bureaucrat and a cult figure among conservatives. He went on to be head of the history department at McGill and then the dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. At the very least, he told McLuhan, don't go to Oxford.
Go to Cambridge, but no Fieldhouse. Late in Pete Thompson and McGill. Now, was a chapter told me go to Cambridge. Thank God he did. But Lodge and the Fieldhouse wildly discrepant types.
A paradoxical figure indeed.
By the way, it was all Fieldhouse who taught me don't go to Oxford. go to Cambridge, that's where they have the best English school.
And the best for last, Henry Wilkes Wright, a man who may have subliminally influenced McLuhan more than any other professor in the young man's life. Out of the 6,000 items within the Fisher Rare Book Library collection, only 168 books are heavily annotated of Marshall McLuhan's working library. Wright's The Moral Standards of Democracy is the 168th of 168. Here is a quote from the 1925 book. In modern society, association by direct personal contact has been supplemented and, so far as social organization is concerned, has largely been replaced by impersonal association and indirect contact. Now, these activities of indirect contact and communication proceed through the intermediation and instrumentality of mechanical agencies. And these agencies themselves are extensions.
I investigate media, and I don't pretend to understand them in any complete sense at all. But I find them very exciting things to investigate. They are, as you know, parts of our own bodies, enlarged and extended to create human environments. Any technology is a part of ourselves acting as a new environment.
Extensions in the physical world of those bodily organs of intercommunication and personal association possessed by every human being. With regard to the just mentioned quotation, here's Cameron McEwen of mcluhanvideos.com.
Well, Wright talks about what he calls intercommunication as being the key to human identity, human social life, human religious life, etc. And when McLuhan later encounters what may be called the history of communication in Innis.
You won't read this in any book except Understanding Media. Oh, no, you will. Bias Communication. Harold Innis has something on paper and paperers. Yes, sir.
What was the effect of Chinese paper and the books in China?
They didn't have an alphabet. They could not write messages. You see, until the alphabet came in, writing never had the meaning that it has for the Western world. Chinese and Japanese writing and all other forms of writing create only little pockets of culture. They do not create visual space. They do not create interconnected spaces. They create little pockets of village-like cultures such as we are returning to now in the electric age. Hippie style. Chinese writing does not create visual space, does not create civilization, does not create roads. Now, you haven't read Understanding Media.
All they're really trying
Or you wouldn't have said that nonsense.
to do is to
You didn't say yes.
get
Because I explained this in detail.
to the
Well, now,
world that they're
that raises,
not in. You know?
that
There's only one kind of writing that creates civilization.
raises a very, this is the
Hebrew writing does
great
not.
big gap
Arabic writing does not.
culturally,
Persian writing does not.
technologically in our world.
Chinese, Japanese writing do not create civilization because they do not create visual space.
Is the one between hardware and software.
There is only one kind of writing that creates visual space, and that's phonetic writing.
The old mechanical hardware world,
And it was invented 2,500 years ago by the Greeks, and they invented civilization. At the same time, they invented the phonetic alphabet and Euclidean geometry.
19th century
We no longer live in an age of phonetic alphabet or of Euclidean geometry.
industry,
This visual space is finished.
specialist,
May I speak on that? There's a rather interesting
assembly line,
thing in relation to this.
which gives us our
In 1400 BC,
schooling system,
on the island of Knossos,
grades,
there was invented the first
exam,
phonetic alphabet.
classes,
It was very
Built on the
subject,
primitive, but nevertheless it did have phonetic symbols in it.
built on the model of a book.
Now, Knossos is very close to Egypt. At the same time in Egypt,
Third and verse.
there was reigning a pharaoh named Akhenaten.
1, 2, 3,
Well, that
4.
And he was the first
wonderful world
pharaoh in Egypt to sponsor
that created
illustrative painting.
civilization. It was a wonderful world.
And I found this at the time extremely interesting because I wanted to find, being convinced that there is a definite parallel between the development of phonetic writing and
Created
verisimilitude or visual reality in painting.
civilization.
As soon as I encountered these things, as soon as I encounter either one or the other, I want to find its counterpart. A similar incident happened when I discovered that 11th century Japanese sculpture was highly realistic.
It didn't.
And I checked that through with Japanese scholars and discovered that in the 11th century, for a very brief time, the Japanese had a phonetic alphabet. This is apropos what will happen in a few minutes, actually, with our slides.
Before in
Right.
any culture, and it's finished. Why? Because it has been
Social life,
Circuited.
human religious life, etc.
surpassed.
And when McLuhan later encounters what may be called the history of
including
communication in Innis, this immediately rings
in a new culture of software, information, or electric simultaneously,
old bells that he had in his head from Wright.
which the computer people call software. And this is a world where you have multi-billion-dollar environment of service images, vast affluence, available to children standing up in their playpens watching TV.
In fact, Finnegan's Wake is the greatest guide to the media,
1939.
guide to the media ever devised on this planet, and is a tremendous study of the action of all media upon the human psyche and sensorium. But it's difficult to read. But it's worth it. Now, as we move our evolutionary process out into the environment itself, our children in a 20th century information environment have to process more data. If the outside world suddenly becomes charged with vast quantities of highly organized information than any human being in any previous culture of the world, our children from early infancy are engaged in extraordinarily hard work. And that work is mainly just growing growing up, because to grow up in a modern electronic environment is a fantastically complex and difficult job.
What then becomes the role of education? And I think the answer again is simple. It's back to the hunter, back to training perception. The hunter learns by alerting every sense and training his perceptual life.
And instead of putting something... It's a rather luminous phrase, or Marischal.
1939.
The New York painters for the past 30 years have been painting aesthetic theories. They have not been painting things. But then he didn't make the further observation that the aesthetic theories have become things.